It's time for the Rose Chat Podcast, a podcast dedicated to celebrating the world's most beloved flower, the rose. Join award-winning gardeners Chris VanCleave and Teresa Byington as they chat with rose lovers and experts from around the globe. With each episode, you'll gain valuable knowledge and insights to achieve the rose garden you've always dreamed of. Listen now as we explore the world of roses.
Hey friends, one of my favorite guests is back to talk about one of our favorite subjects, fragrant roses. Matt Douglas, the owner of High Country Roses, is here today. Hey Matt, welcome to Rose Chat.
Hi Teresa, it's wonderful to be with you again. I'm so glad that we get a chance to catch up and talk about some fragrant roses.
Oh, me too. This subject about the attribute of a rose that makes it so special, fragrance. That's a hot topic. So whether you're an over-the-top lover of roses or not, we know that the first thing people do when they encounter a rose is they put their nose in it.
That's a fact. It's probably the question I get the most is what's a great fragrant rose to grow? Or if a rose doesn't have a fragrance, why would I even grow it, they say. But it's not quite that bad. We do love roses, and we love the fragrance that's associated with them for sure.
We do. And there's many reasons that I grow roses. I love the blooms. I love the roses that give you tons of blooms for bouquets. I love their health. I love so much about them. But when you can combine all of those things with fragrance, it is a winner for sure.
Yeah, why not have it all, Teresa? We might as well just get it all in one package, right?
I've got to quote Michael Marriott. In his book that's simply titled Roses, which is an amazing book because who knows more about roses than Michael Marriott? And I wish I had his English accent to say this, but here we go. A deliciously fragrant rose has the wonderful ability to both calm us down and raise our spirits.
It is so true and so good. I love that quote. And, scent is just so important to us because I think, honestly, the scent of a rose is just something that can, transport you back in time and place. It just kind of brings up memories from days gone by and just can just really be like that. It's kind of like a hug from your plant.
It sure is. One of my favorite memories that has to do with fragrance comes from when I was a very, very young child. And this fragrance remained a mystery for many, many years. And it was just this faint memory that I had of being in my great-grandmother's yard. She lived in town, but she had a pretty big yard for town. But around that yard it's just a hedgerow of just a thicket. To me, it just looked like this massive walls of vegetation. But there was something there that I would smell, and I never really knew what it was. And I would always think about that. I wonder what that was. When I got serious about roses and I started growing old garden roses, especially rugosas, there it was. It was that fragrance. That was what I remembered all my life from the time I was a tiny child. So I don't remember ever seeing flowers, but I remembered the fragrance.
Yeah, I have a very similar experience. I just think back to living with my mom and Dr. Campbell, and there were over 400 roses in that side yard there at that house, and I was just a teenager at the time, but man alive, I would just love walking through there. And similar experience, you just sort of take it all in, but that scent was just all over that yard, and I can just see it in my mind's eye even today, and in large part because of that the fragrance.
Yes, absolutely. When you give the gift of a rose, and we never want people to be disappointed, so they can be charmed by their beauty. But boy, if you can stick in a bouquet, a fragrant one, that is definitely a win-win. And when I think of fragrant roses, I'm always going to go back at first to the old garden roses.
Oh, I would agree, and that's a great place to to jump in with fragrance. You know, our noses and our bodies have over 1,000 genes that are olfactory receptors. So just think of, there's that much of our genome that's like dedicated to discerning and thinking about scents. And you know, we just develop preferences and we imprint these memories in our minds. And for me, a lot of those were old garden rose, real rich scented roses growing in the family yard.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, and there's so many different scents of the rose. You know, you have your bold scents, and then there's some lesser scents. And so, you know, tell us a little bit about the different breakdown of the different scents of a rose.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, scent, you know, comes from a combination of oil-based compounds of alcohols and sugars and roses. So I think, as I recall, you made me do some homework, which was good because I always like to learn things when I talk to you. So I believe there's 4 major alcohols that really blend and combine to make the rose scents. And so one of the other things we did is I got with my staff and we made a list of all the scents that we've used in describing roses or people have used to describe to us. And I'm just going to read them to you because it's really kind of interesting and just gives us an idea of the diversity of scents in roses. So here we go.
Great.
We have tea, we have cloves, we have spice, apples. Somebody used to say grandma's soap, clover, musk, licorice and anise, raspberry, myrrh, pepper, citrus, honey, apricot, moss, dirt or earth, orange, lemon, bay, linseed, marigold, melon, banana, tar, elderflower, pear, almond, woody, grass, mint, plum, wine. And we've even had somebody use the word fetid to describe like decaying flesh, which I'll be honest, we had a skunk die behind the greenhouse and I've never smelled a rose like that. And I hope to never.
What is it with skunks this year? We had a skunk encounter this year, which really, we had a bad critter problem for the last couple of years, just very destructive with groundhogs and raccoons. But once we were visited by a skunk, nobody came.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't.
It was awesome.
Good to say.
So they really do win in the scent department.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the interesting things is really how scent is really, really variable with roses. We think of it in terms of like, we've stuck our nose in there and that's exactly what it smells like. But do this little exercise for me, Teresa. Think of a delicious chocolate cake and pretend that you're taking the first bite of that cake and just think about how that, you know, the taste and everything. Is the second bite different to you?
Well, yes, I think it is.
I know, right? So the same is true with your rose. You know, you may stick your nose in there once and you know, maybe really, really strong. And, you know, you may have notes of this, that, and who knows what. But the second time you smell it, it may be a little different. And that really is an indication of the oil content of that bloom, and the mixture of those oils is really what creates the experience that we smell. And a lot of it depends on each individual person. That's why sometimes you'll have people that are like, wow, this rose doesn't smell at all, or this rose, you know, is super fragrant, or it smells like pepper, or it smells like wine, or, you know, so many different things to different people. The good thing is everybody can be right because everybody experiences it a little bit different. Even things like the time of day, the amount of humidity in the air. You know, we have people go through the greenhouse all the time and stick their nose in roses, and they're like, these don't smell at all. And I'm like, well, you're basically smelling it in a wind tunnel. We're bringing air through the greenhouse constantly all day, every day. So yeah, it dissipates a little bit over time. So, given the shape of the rose, the shape of your nose and the conditions, you can really, really have a much different experience each time you stick your nose in a rose.
I remember when I learned about time of day and how dependent that could be, how that could change the experience, because a friend was coming over and I said, "Oh, you have to smell this rose. It is absolutely wonderful." And I believe that rose, I don't have it anymore, but it was Beverly, and a very fragrant rose, a very pretty rose, was a big winner at one of the Biltmore Rose Trials, as I recall. And so I took them over so that they could enjoy Beverly. And there wasn't any scent. And that was just astonishing to me. But it was at the end of a very hot day. So I guess Beverly had just used up all of her scent for that day. And the heat had just, she was just like we are at the end of the day. We were just, of a hot day, she was just done. And so were we. So I thought, well, I started paying attention to that after that.
Those oils were expressed and maybe took off.
She had had her moment. Yeah. Well, in my garden, I don't have a ton of old garden roses like you have there, but I do have plenty. And I've always called that early spring bloom fireworks and fragrance, because those old garden roses, they are not only filled with fragrance, but those bushes are filled with blooms, just the massive amounts of bloom. And so even though they don't last all summer and they don't reoccur, it's worth it. I mean, just to come out of a dark winter and boom, have this explosion and the fragrance, it's so worth it. I wish everyone could have it.
It's absolutely. I mean, we just had the same thing here. All of the old garden roses have just about finished up. The one-time bloomers or the spring bloomers have finished up for the year. But yeah, it's such a wonderful time of year. I always say some people like the weekend. Some people really like Christmas because of the anticipation of those old garden roses coming. It's the same sort of thing in the spring around my yard, and I just really enjoy walking through the yard at this time of year, and seeing some of those old garden roses, especially, the ones. When we're talking about old garden roses and fragrance, I think everybody kind of gravitates towards the damask roses, don't you?
Oh, yes, absolutely. They are hard to beat, just hard to beat.
Yeah, and that's a group of old garden roses that developed throughout Iran and Iraq, up into Bulgaria, in that area. And the roses are really known for having a high oil content. And because of that, lots and lots of fragrance. So even in Bulgaria, there's a rose valley of Bulgaria where they grow the rose Kazanlik, and it is in so many perfumes and fragrances. Even today we've got folks doing a lot more and more. We have people calling in and talking about distilling roses. And almost always I steer them towards the damask roses, and in particular, the roses like Kazanlik or Isfahan or Autumn Damask. They really make, great roses for those kind of projects because of the high fragrance and the high oil content in those blooms.
Absolutely. We had the pleasure of visiting Turkey a few years back. And as soon as I got back, I called you because I wanted more of the roses that were grown there. And there were thousands of roses. We were there early enough in the season that we didn't get to see the blooms, but boy, they were there. And you steered me to Isfahan and Kazanlik, and they are so wonderful when it comes to fragrance, and takes me back to that. But I wanted to mention, I saw somewhere where when you think about the rose oil, and I was thinking about, I'm in farm country here, and I think about harvests and the big harvesters that the growers use. But roses, I mean, do they just hand pick them? Because I think I read that it takes over 60,000 flowers to create
Yeah.
1 ounce of rose oil.
Yeah, it is on the order of that. It is amazing how much how many flowers really have to be harvested, and you're 100% correct. It's by hand. Those
Oh,
rose
my.
bushes are cared for and all done by hand and hauled out of there and distilled down. I've always thought it would be a great thing for me to do, a guy with a lot of roses, to try my hand at distilling and I haven't quite got there yet, just because of the volume of petals that they use just to get the smallest amounts of oil and rose water.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And when we see pictures of old garden roses, they cover a lot of space. And I know we have a lot of listeners that don't have a lot of space. Are there old garden roses that would work well in today's smaller gardens?
Yeah, definitely. Old garden roses kind of come in all shapes and sizes. So many of them are fragrant too. I think of like the Gallica roses, which were common to sort of the Mediterranean era or area, and were used by the Romans a lot in terms of like packing bodies and things like that. Things where you need a lot of fragrance. And those roses all have a different but strong fragrance as well, and they're kind of medium-sized roses. You could do a rose like a Belle de Cressy or an Orpheline de Juliette. I've got both of those growing in my yard here, and I couldn't leave them alone. They were so pretty this year. And you get with the Gallica roses, you get all those deep colors, the purples and reds. There are some smaller, like Madame Isaac Perrier. Bourbon rose is exceptionally fragrant and definitely stays a little more compact. The rose de Resh, which is named after Resh in Iran or Iraq. Oh, we'll have to look that one up. But the rose de Resh is just a phenomenal Portland rose that is compact and full of fragrance. It's just a beautiful rose. One of our local rosarians here, Peggy Williams, she says if you've got one rose to grow and it's an old garden rose, it should be that one. And I definitely have to agree with her on that one. And then getting a little bit bigger, but still manageable. Some of the centifolias, like Paul Ricot, is a phenomenal rose, and of course the centifolias are really known for just the abundance of petals in their bloom. So on top of a good oil content, you've got a large volume of petals, and just really get your nose in on that. And even like the species roses, while they get bigger, they still have some pretty incredible fragrance as well. The one I always think of is Rosa eglanteria, a sweetbriar rose. And I love growing that rose. It's just, it's a thorny old mess but if you got a good spot for it, its leaves smell like apples. You can kind of crush them and get that, and it just has a lovely fragrance for tea rose too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very nice. It really is true that there really is an old rose for every garden. If you have the space, they can cover a wall. They can climb a tree. I mean, they're very versatile. They're as versatile as the fragrance, or they can fit neatly into a small garden. So that's the wonderful thing about them.
That's the truth. There's one for every place and everyone.
Oh, I think so. I'm thinking of some of the ones you mentioned that I don't have, and I get a little greedy. I start thinking, well, I need that one, and I need, Peggy Williams. Well, how can I say no to?
Yeah, right.
If Peggy Williams believes this to be true, how can I call myself a Rosarian and not have that rose? So,
So true. So true.
but we do want to move into the modern roses because there's so much to be said. It wasn't just fragrance that spearheaded innovation through the years. It was also the ability to rebloom. I think of the Victorians who fell completely in love with most flowers, but in particular with the rose. I mean, we have them to thank for, starting competitive rose shows and England's National Rose Society. But through the years, we've come to find out that it's taken a while to get health and vigor and rebloom and fragrance all put together. It seems like it must be a little tricky.
Oh, yeah. Well, first and foremost, I want you to know I entered a rose show and got a blue ribbon this year. I was pretty proud of myself.
Well, go you.
I know, right? I may be back. It does seem to be, it is a little, it's fun and it's addictive. So look out. But yeah, you're right. One of the interesting things about modern roses is, that we've always seemed to have fragrant roses, and we always seem to have disease-resistant roses, and we always seem to have roses that don't repeat bloom a whole lot or do. And I think what we were talking about is we just never seem to have all of the above. And until fairly recently, there just have been some great developments in rose breeding and in just bringing together things like fragrance and disease resistance and just being strong rebloomers. And, today's rose grower, you really can kind of have it all, can't you?
Mm-hmm. I'm sure the Victorians would have been very proud of where we've come. They would have wanted these roses in their gardens for sure.
It's a fact. It's a fact. So, it's interesting that breaking the connection sort of between traditional roses that would smell great and have that sort of perfect bloom, and their susceptibility to fungal diseases in particular has been a tough thing. And I spoke with Christian Bedard of Weeks Roses here a little while ago, just to kind of talk about their process and all the things that they've done in order to kind of bring, really fragrant, great repeating roses with disease resistance to market. And, so many of their roses, you can just see by looking at them with that just shiny foliage and just healthy plant. You can see the results of what they've really been breeding for. And what Christian really told me is once they make a genetic connection, in other words, they cross a pair of roses that gets them the desired scent or the desired color. Once that seedling grows up, it's in a place where they'll start to test it. Now, if that seedling ends up with even the slightest hint of black spot or powdery mildew infection in the greenhouse, that'll be the last you see of that seedling. It's amazing the number of roses that they toss out due to susceptibility to fungal issues is just staggering. So what he really told me though is when with Weeks, the Rose Julia Child was really a huge turning point for them. And that was developed by Tom Carruth. And that rose was really the point where they had a gorgeous yellow rose. It would rebloom, and it was really resistant to disease. So selective breeding is really what they do to kind of bring these things together and keep these traits together. And that really helps explain a lot as to why we see so many more roses on the market these days that are, that have it all.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a quick look on Help Me Find, and currently there's 110 roses that have Julia Child as a parent in commerce. And I find that number just staggering because, that rose has only been around for a little over 20 years and has honestly been under patent protection for most of that, rightfully so. But to think that there's 110 descendants of that rose just tells you how they've got it right, and they go from there. And that's really, I think, kind of the story across a lot of breeders. Once they get those genetics dialed in, then they're able to just continue to produce new and different varieties from that strong foundation.
Well, I am so glad that the Christian is still working on that, because he has blown me out of the water with a new one called Chantilly Cream. I bought this one this year, and the blooms are just huge. They're yellow, a creamy yellow. The fragrance is off the charts, and it's just, I see no disease. It's just gorgeous. So well done, Christian, on that one. So I don't know if Julia Child is in the parentage, but I'm kind of thinking it probably is.
It's funny because you had asked me to put together a list of great modern fragrant roses, and then we were chatting before, and that one was just right on the tip of both of our lists. It really is such a great fragrant rose.
Yeah. So what else is on your list for fragrant roses that we need to have?
You asked me for 10 and I couldn't get it down to 12. I had 12 was as close as I could get. So
I love it. Perfect. I love your math.
Let me tell you, I talk to a lot of people about roses every day, and fragrance is always on the list. So it's a topic I'm familiar with. So, and like I mentioned, most of these roses are pretty new releases. So maybe things you don't have in your yard. Also these roses, they're all as looking at the list, they're all good growing, repeat blooming, disease-resistant fragrant roses. So I wouldn't hesitate for a second to put any of these roses in my yard. So here's a few of them. Raspberry Cupcake, that came out 2 years ago, I believe. And I love this rose. Obviously, as the name suggests, it's got a bit of a fruity scent to it. And man, it's just been a great performers for us in the greenhouse and in folks' yard. We're starting to have a good track record with that rose. And it's sort of cousin plants, or at least from the same breeder. Top Cream is another one that I really, really have liked, and Bliss is on that list. Earth Angel, boy, I can't even tell. We sell so many Earth Angel bushes. It's really been a unique rose, just an interesting shape, kind of a globular bloom. Very rounded bloom, tight and packed with petals, kind of a light pink, and fragrance to boot. Honestly, I don't know that we can keep them in the greenhouse.
She just adds, the old-fashioned charm and grace and beauty. I have 3 of these.
Yeah, okay. 3. That's a good number.
Oh my goodness. She's just beautiful. And she gets flouncy as she gets older, but she just is just charm and just a good in so many ways.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. It's just been a great performer for us in the greenhouse. Good grower, good bloomer. Yep, love it a lot. So, and then I've got a few from Christian and Weeks Roses. So, Fun in the Sun is a lovely hybrid tea with kind of a layered golden coloring to it. Great fragrance. They developed a rose called Perfume Factory here a couple years back, which is a hybrid tea. And it's a little bit of a slow grower for us, but I've got one in my yard, and I'm so glad I put it in my yard. I was just out there looking at it the other day, and man alive, it's really put on great size. It just took a little bit of time to get going. You know how that goes sometimes.
Yes.
And then I really like the rose White Licorice. I think it's a great, healthy rose. It's one of the roses that gets into the sort of licorice anise scent, which I will admit not everybody loves, but man, it is strong and just a great growing rose, just a little bit of an off-white. And then kind of one of their classic fragrant roses that's been around a few years is the rose Ebb Tide. Nice. And then we released just this year Pop Art, and I am thrilled with that one as well. It's one of their variegated roses. It's got just kind of a beautiful blend of pink, orange, and yellow, and just a great cheerful rose for your yard. Let's see what else I have on my list here. I jumped around a little, so I hope I didn't miss any. I've got Honey Dijon. That one's got really layered fragrance to it. Oh, and one of the roses that I just have been really impressed with, and one of the questions I get all the time is do you have the peace rose? Do we grow it on its own roots? And we do. And to be honest with you, it's just a difficult rose on its own roots. And so it is a tricky one. So we'll grow it, but we have small numbers of it. But we brought in Enchanted Peace, which is kind of a newer update on the peace rose. I think it was 2, maybe 3 years ago now we've had it. And I'm telling you, I couldn't be more happy with that rose. Everybody that calls and asks for peace, I'm like, are you sure? Maybe you should take a look at this Enchanted Peace. And a big part of that reason is the fragrance on it's phenomenal. Just really strong scent, very healthy, upright growth, and a bloom that's maybe a little deeper colored than the original piece. But you won't be sad if you put one of those in your yard.
Well, that was a great list. I do have a couple that do super well for me that I'm going to add to your list.
Yeah, we're just going to have a list of like 20 or 30 by the time we get done. It'll be good.
Yes, probably. One that's new to me that's doing pretty well. I've not had her in the garden very long, but the blooms are showing off and doing pretty well. So from one bloom season, Sweet Mademoiselle. I love the color. And the color is just, and the blooms are huge, and I just love it. I mean, you look at the garden, you go, whoa, look at her. And one that I've had for maybe, 5 years that I recommend it to everyone, and that's Savannah. It's been around a while, but she is healthy, fragrant, and the blooms, she's listed a hybrid tea, and she does look like a hybrid tea when she first starts, but then you get this full, flat, open, beautiful bloom, and very fragrant. Totally love Savannah. She's truly one of my favorites. And then another new one that is Eustacia Vi. And I know our regular listeners are saying, here she goes again with Eustacia Vi. But she's won awards for best health and best fragrance. But in thinking about Eustacia Vi, I've got to talk a little bit about the fragrance. I always thought that my favorite rose fragrance would be the Old Garden Rose fragrance, above all. But the ones I'm grabbing to today, it seems, are strong, fruity. It's what they're calling Eustacia Vi. And several of the ones I started looking into, the ones I'm thinking, when I stop by these roses in the garden, I go, oh my goodness, you smell so good. And it's I go and look, and it's not old garden rose. It's strong fruity. So it's a very flower to me, fruity. I don't think of a fruit at all or citrus when I'm smelling this. It's just a strong floral, but it's called fruity. So honestly, it's I'm loving it. So I guess either I'm changing or something's changing, but I'm just crazy about those roses that that have that fruity fragrance. It is really nice. I'm loving it.
Well, it's just, your thousands of olfactory receptors. They've just shifted a little bit. And now
Yes.
you're all set.
I know. Well,
I think it's so great how, I mean, everybody's got something different that they really love. And, we try to capture it in words and in descriptions and comparisons, but the roses are totally unique. The scent is unique. The experience is unique. And you know what? Everybody can like what they like. It's just a wonderful thing in the yard. And, I've got to start growing Eustacia Vi too, now that you've said it again. So, well,
and again, and again, and again.
Okay.
We'll have to see how she does for you in Colorado. And, she's first year for me. So, maybe next year I'll have a different story. But boy,
well, there's always room in the garden for something interesting.
Yes, there is. And one of the other things about her that you'll notice is that she does great in a vase. And that's something that I've been, I've been on this mission in the last few years to add more fragrance to the garden and, and to start, taking a look at, how long do these, I give a lot of bouquets away. And so how long are these lasting for people? And I can tell you that the new one was it Chantilly Cream that we talked about, Christian Bedard. And in State of Grace, that's another good one. It's not fragrant for me, but it's a gorgeous rose. So the three top contenders for lasting in a vase right now are State of Grace, Chantilly Cream, and of course Eustacia Vi.
That's fantastic. We grow State of Grace here because my daughter's name is Grace, and as she heads off to college, it'll be what I remember her with.
What a rose. That's so great for her. But what a rose. I mean, you talked about one of the roses, I forget which one, that took a while. Maybe it was Perfume Factory that took a while in your garden.
Perfume Factory,
and
yep.
State of Grace I planted last year, and she had a few blooms, but I wouldn't have called her outstanding. And I want her to be, because, I love the name State of Grace, because we're all in a state of grace. And I just love it. And the color, but I really couldn't get a feel for it because it didn't have enough bloom, I didn't think. This year, she has been a blooming machine. And it's so great because she starts out vibrant, but she sort of ages to that Coco Loco kind of more with the mauve backing. I mean, she just kind of goes through the color wheel. I mean, it's just beautiful. So it is a great, great rose. But, don't expect a lot of fragrance, at least, and that's what we're talking about today. But it is a good rose for sure.
Hey, and anything that sticks around in vase life is, it's always a great thing to grow and bring in the house and enjoy.
Absolutely. And now that we know so much about the time of day and the different points that we've talked about as far as when's fragrance at its best, we just need to be smelling our roses a lot. We just need to get our noses in those roses as much as possible. Because one aspect, Michael Marriott said it can lift our mood. So, we all need that in our life. Now, I'm wondering what trends you're seeing this year and what people are buying, or is there a certain color that's kind of been more popular, or a type of rose?
Well, I think for the past couple of years, our top selling roses have kind of followed similar lines. We had talked a little earlier about Earth Angel. That's been a top seller for us, and Princess Charlene de Monaco. Both of those roses, they do what we talk about. They've got a lot of fragrance. They've got good repeat blooming, and resist disease. I think that's really kind of a sign that the tide has changed, kind of changed a bit. I think that so many of these breeders have kind of gotten it right and have really heard what the consumers are looking for in their plants. And man alive, there's just been some big hits, some great roses over the last couple years. And it's great to see. It's great to see the new ones coming in and being good performers.
A lot of what people are saying to me is they want those full blooms. They're just really, they want a full bloom. And that has been something that, a few years back was harder to come by the fragrance and those big, big full gorgeous multi-petal blooms and the disease resistance. And we don't want to give that up. So, but I think there's just so many there now. And we're just so lucky for all the good work that's being done because they just are so beautiful. And I think people are really enjoying them.
Yeah, it is true. It is true. And, and the people still love the old roses too. I mean, we sell everything we grow every year. I'd love to figure a good way to grow more because we sure would sell more. But the old garden roses are just really, really popular with people. Especially, like I said, we've seen a lot of people starting to, do some distilling. One of the interesting things that I've seen people do this year is cooking with roses. So using rose petals and hips in cooking. It's interesting to see the different ways that people like to interact with their roses and enjoy their roses.
Absolutely. That is one of the things that was very obvious to us that was different about being in the region in Turkey that we got to visit. And that is that we think of roses as a fragrance. They think of it as fragrance, but they also think of it as a flavoring. So many dishes there have roses in their flavoring. And that's just something we sort of think of it as perfumey. But that's us, but that's not a lot of the rest of the world. They definitely use their roses in cooking. And so that was really interesting for us to see. So I'm wondering, it's getting hot out there. Do you still ship roses in the summer? Because I've got a few still on my list.
Yeah. So, we have always sort of taken the tack that we just sort of ship all through the summer. So I know a lot of people do close down. What we do is we do limit shipping to Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday throughout the summer. So we will send roses in July and August. We do that so that it kind of narrows it down the time they're in transit. Certainly fall is a great time to get them too. And certainly you can order and schedule roses to be sent anytime you like. We will, if there's some wild heat wave, and there always is, we will delay things in the summer just to kind of ensure health on the plants.
Well, I know that I have received roses from you all points of the summer, and they've always been fantastic. There was even one year that we had been out of town, stopped our mail or something. Somehow they got delivered to the post office. It was just a different thing. This was many years ago. I don't know if you remember this story. And I didn't have the roses. And so we had picked up our mails and dealt with all of that, but for some reason they didn't give us the roses. They were there. And we figured out that they had been there for probably at least a week. Didn't stop them one bit. They were so well packaged. You had them so well packaged, put them in the ground, off they went. I think that was in July.
I think that was like one of the first few times we ever talked was, hey.
Where's my roses? I sent them.
What's going on here?
Yeah, they were not crispy. They were ready to go. Put them in the ground. And I think one of those was Ghislaine de Felagon. And you know what she ended up doing? She covered my potting shed beautifully. So, yeah.
Well, I always say, sending roses in boxes across the country is as inexact a science as you can get. So where it goes wrong, we'll do our best to get it right. So so if there is a problem, we'll take care of it.
Absolutely. You're so good at that. Matt, thanks so much for joining me today. And thanks for all the work you do to bring beauty and fragrance to our gardens. We sure appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you, Teresa. And likewise, thank you for this podcast that you do. I think it connects with so many people. I talk to people every day that say, "Oh, I heard you on Rose Chat." And I say, "That Teresa, she's all right."
She's all right. Well, you're all right too. So thanks so much for joining me and taking time.
Absolutely. Have a great summer.
You too. And friends, thank you for joining us today. And until next time, do take some extra time to stop and smell the roses. We know it's good for us. It's good for our mind, our body, and our spirit.
You've been listening to the Rose Chat podcast with Chris VanCleave and Teresa Byington, expert rose gardeners who want to help you achieve the rose garden of your dreams. Don't miss an episode. Listen anytime on our website at rosechatpodcast.com or listen on the go via the Rose Chat app on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. Share this podcast with your social networks and join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by using the hashtag RoseChat. Join us next time for another edition of the Rose Chat podcast. The Rose Chat podcast is a production of the Rose Chat Media Group, Birmingham, Alabama.